So we're back to green time, ordinary time. For those of you in the northern hemisphere, it's the getting warm, look forward to holiday time. It is not quite the same down here in the southern hemisphere. And so we've had a whole series of feasts and festivals after Easter, and today we're back to ordinary time. So it might seem a little bit with our gospel today. Jesus and his newly named disciples are back in the ordinary time and they are feeling inundated. They are not able to rest. They are not able to eat. It would seem that Jesus' family think he's lost the plot. He is being overrun. Out of concern, they want to rescue him, to take him away from those that crowd about him and besiege him. As if to confirm their concern, we almost immediately hear that scholars of the religious establishment from Jerusalem, where the religious elite reside, those theologians and thinkers, those who are respected for their deep learning and erudite scholarship, they happen to turn up as well. They too are seeking to bring reason and reasonableness to the table. Rather than validate the draw and gathering power of this itinerant teacher, whose power defies entrapment by convention, they generate a logic that fits their end. Such uncontrolled, attracting power can reasonably be explained as that of Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons, the source of chaos and disorder. But it's their very logic by which Jesus unstitches their argument. The spirit of that which disrupts and destroys would not generate the gathering of people in hope, the restoration and coming to wholeness of people. Those who deny the source of that which brings life, especially such leaders who should know better, in so doing deny the source of their own life, cast themselves out. Well, the Jesus we meet today in Mark is disruptive and difficult. He's unstitching and redefining relationship boundaries, boundaries that you and I know are necessary for establishing belonging and identity, for us to know who is who and who is who in relationship to the other. That's the way it is. Boundary rules ensure safety, especially when we're negotiating the difference of those unlike us. It makes sure that the outsiders are identified and suitably defended against. This is scary stuff. The rules that govern and define and structure family and religious alliances and lineages, the very bedrock for our self-understanding, for knowing who we are with respect to the others, is being excised and cut away and redefined and reformed. If there are no boundaries, upon what can you depend? How do you know who you are or where you stand? Let's face it, Jesus is simply not being reasonable. He's being portrayed as passionately engaged without counting the cost. This sounds rather a lot like madness. The sort of thing I think I'd be worried about if it was my child involved. And yet we say there is something reasonable about this. When we listen to this account from Mark, because of our religious inclinations, we are influenced to hear it in a particular way. This is the gospel, after all. We're biased and we want to side with Jesus and those who crowd around, rather than the side of those that aren't in the know, the family of birth or those great teachers with an issue, because we like to think we get it and we're going to walk this way. Okay, so for those of you that want to sign up to this Jesus tribe, what shows that you belong is how you do the talk of the good news you proclaim. How you do what you say you are. It matters more than an affirmation of creed or allegiance to religious tradition, more than doctrine or dogma, familial ties that constrain, even if from loving concern, doing what brings to life the abundant, transforming presence of God in real life, in real historical time is what it's about. It's what counts. It isn't about theory. It isn't about comfortable armchair, keyboard warrior rhetoric. It's about practice. Anyone want to leave now? So to choose to stay and to name you are a part of a movement in history that is called to enact God's transforming presence and is willing to accept that what we do reveals what we believe and who you are is very confronting. How do you know what you are revealing by what you do? Do you closely examine what you do and then reflect on what that reveals about what you actually mean, believe, proclaim? Do you proclaim and believe and then pay close attention to what you do to make sure it has integrity with what you've just said, mindfully and consciously pay attention to what you do? But then you've got to ask the question, if you are so busy self-examining, where is the time to live and to do this abandoned, dangerous, boundary-busting, careless, extravagant way of Jesus? I want to share with you a story. It came from a podcast that, a few years back now, it came out of Chicago. There was a young man in the US. He was in his 20s. He was a type 1 diabetic who had lapsed into a diabetic coma. He was a young man who lived in denial and defiance of his diabetes, so he had been eating all the types of food he should not. After a period of time, the medical facility where he was being kept alive suggested to his family they should make the decision to turn off his life support, for there was very little hope. His close friends could not bear to participate in this, so they stayed away all the week that it was scheduled to take place. And what they did is they started to post messages on Facebook, eulogies and memorials to their friend. But in the time of that week, the family had a change of heart. They didn't switch off the life support. They did shift him to another facility, and within 3 days, the young man regained consciousness. His brother actually posted this on his brother's Facebook page, but as it didn't get any likes, it disappeared in the outpouring of messages from his friends. A week later, the young man posted on Facebook that he was indeed alive. The young man had chance to read all the tributes to him. The person his friends described was not the person he saw himself as, understood himself to be. He had no idea that he was this person others saw him as. It provided him with the impetus to change the way he lived, to want to live and be the person that others recognized him to be. It gave him back his life. It is really hard to see ourselves as we are, to see the person that our doing reveals. We need people and a process that helps us to see the outcome and consequence of our action and behaviour. For us to see it in ways that means that we are willing to receive it and are able to learn from it. And then we can choose whether to modify, adapt and change and do differently. Be the people we aspire to be, and or realise the person we are that may surprise us and empower us. We need this especially if we are to be people who are willing to do that radical breaking the bounds of relationship that ensnare and prevent the unconventional justice-bringing, love-insisting life of God into being. We might understand a context like this, a witnessing community of faith, to be such a place we can do that. A place with people who are trustworthy to risk being ourselves among, to risk the vulnerability that this brings, to choose as our family, our whanau of identity and support, the community of those who are a disruptive presence in face of conventional wisdom and a benumbed society that enacts injustice and inequity with temerity. It's not reasonable, not really sensible, the choices this Jesus opens up before, are they? Yet here we are.